Yep.
I'm Andrea with Coast to Coast Networking. We are a network group open to anyone. We're not limited by any group that you might belong to. We're a group of real estate investors interested in networking and learning. And so we hope to offer you that opportunity to do both at these meetings. We meet every Thursday night. But I'm not working on prepping and planning meetings and events or going to them. I'm also part of Coast to Coast Turnkey, where we provide done-for-you solutions to create passive income for your life. So that being said, that's who I am and what we do. And tonight, I am really happy. We have, for those of you who don't know, Mark the lender. Mark has been in the lending business since 2008. 18, sorry. And he's taken more classes he's taken almost as many classes on lending as I have in real estate. So he's got a lot of good information. He's in business with his wife, whom I happen to love, and he's got great kids, one of whom spoken on stage. So that's my intro to Mark, and I'm going to let him speak from here on. Talk to you soon. I'm going on mute. I have to pick up this call. Go ahead.
So, hi. Question. How many of you have ever borrowed money?
Me.
All right. Credit cards, right? Car loans, mortgages, etc. How many of you have ever lent money?
Me.
And we're going to even count, when a friend asks, hey, can I borrow $5?
Everybody has.
All right, good. Then you're all familiar with the world's second oldest profession. Excellent. So you're all expecting that I'm going to be selling something. So let's get that out of the way. At MIRS Group, we provide fix and flip loans. We provide buy and hold loans for rental properties. So when you need a loan, come to MIRS Group. Now that I've made my sale, we can talk about how to keep you guys safer when investing, when lending, when doing a project. So the same techniques we use for analyzing a deal will help you analyze a deal, and the techniques we use for lending will help you lend. So we'll talk about the deal analysis, which is the math, right? Scary word right there. And we'll talk about the capital sources and project finances and the documents and best practices. So does it sound good if I talk about the lessons I've learned from my mistakes and what to avoid?
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm Mark the lender, Abramovich, as Andrea mentioned, and I've made about $129,000 of mistakes so far. So I've analyzed thousands of projects, and I've learned some skills which have helped me and my clients, in addition to me, to do better on our deals and avoid six-figure mistakes. So I started investing with rental properties, which has given me experience with buy and hold deals. And in fact, I currently own a property management company with more than 140 doors under management. So my journey took me to lending, which I love passionately. I get to participate in a project which gives a new home to a family, and I get to use my strength, which is the math, the numbers, the analysis. Initially, as I mentioned, I lost money on 4 deals. And even worse than the money has been the time suck. It has taken me years to resolve some of my mistakes, and even then, some are still dragging on. And it sucked, and I understood that it wasn't sustainable. So I threw myself into learning everything I could and finding mentors, taking classes on hard money lending, attending seminars, networking events, learning the process, analyzing what I did wrong. I mean, I did everything I could to get better at this. And I continued providing funding. So while at the same time as, providing funding, also sharing whatever expertise I could with my clients. And so they told me about their experiences, I shared mine. And today, people I work with, right, my clients, and I'm happy to call many of them friends, and actually a lot of you are on this call, successfully invest, and I successfully lend and invest. And at MIRS Group, we continuously see what works and what doesn't work and make adjustments to keep improving. So the deal analysis, right? We'll start there. The simple story is you're buying, you're fixing, you're selling, okay? That's the simplest story of this, right? You're buying a property, you're fixing it up, you're adding value to it, and you're selling it for a profit. So what that entails is you've got two sides of it, right? You've got the expenses and you have the income. So the expenses are things like purchase price, closing costs, renovation costs, and closing costs are very generic, right? Everybody has heard it, but practically speaking, when you're buying real estate, there's some kind of fee attached to it, right? Whether you're paying the title company, whether you're paying an attorney if you're in an attorney state, there's recording fees. So there's some kind of closing cost, right? If you have a loan, then you're going to be paying some fees for that loan. So then there's the renovation cost. The renovation costs, right? That's the actual fixing, the adding value to the property. Afterwards, in addition to that, while you're working on the project, you've got utility costs. So power tools, right? So utility costs that people might not think about, but if your workers are using power tools, that's electricity. If you want heat during the winter, that's gas in some places. Some places it's electric. If you need a place to, if the workers or you are going to be using the bathroom, that's a water bill. So that's the utilities. And potentially you can have other holding costs. For example, lawn care, right? Or HOA fees. And then when you're done with the project and you're selling it, then you've got your selling costs. And your selling costs can be staging. It can be your real estate agent's fee. It could be, if you're selling it yourself, are you marketing it? What are you doing? So there's some kind of cost associated with it as well. And then after all of that, hopefully you now have an income, right? You've got a profit, you've got an income. Great, we're done. Now, the suggestion that I have is when you analyze it, is that you analyze as cash first. And this is something we actually use for rentals as well, that when you're doing an analysis, you first, so that you can compare apples to apples, you first do it as a cash deal, right? And then you start overlaying other financing options that you have available to you. But at least to compare the options, use cash. So, for example, as you're analyzing it, ask yourself, how long will you hold, right? How do you calculate holding time? Depending on where you go, there's different answers. I personally use $5,000 per week as an expense number, and then add about 3 months to it for between lateness as well as finding a buyer and then closing on a mortgage. And don't forget that when you're waiting to close on a sale, you're still paying interest if you have a loan on it, okay? So it's important to know to calculate in the holding time. Now, and also, as you're analyzing it, right, don't forget to list out what are all of the expenses, okay? So get comfortable knowing what are all of the expenses you're going to be paying. In an attorney state, it's an attorney. Not an attorney state, okay, there's title. All of those costs. What are your financing options? So financing options are cash, right? We're just discussing what the deal options are. We're not discussing yet what your personal options are and what you have available to you. But just in general, financing options are cash. And by the way, if you're using a HELOC, for example, as a cash option for yourself, don't forget that your HELOC comes with a cost. Typically, there's a few percent interest that you're still paying for it. So if you're using a HELOC, calculate in the interest that you're paying on it, just so you get the real number on the deal. Then in addition to cash, we have loans. So loans can be from private, it can be from hard money lenders, it can be from private lenders, it can be from banks, professional lenders. So here, let's talk about the difference between private and hard, okay? What is a hard money loan? What's a hard money lender? What's a hard money loan? So if you don't know, it's because it's backed by a hard asset, okay? That's where the name hard money comes from. It's backed by a hard asset, and that's why it's called hard money. Now, private people are your friends, your family, acquaintances. They're the people who know, like, and trust you, okay? They know you, and that's what makes them private. They're private to you. But guess what? When they're lending to you and they're secured by real estate, they're still a hard money lender, just that some of them are private, okay? So, and in the end run, all of it is just money with different terms and different options, right? Your friend may lend you money, accrue interest, charge you very low interest, and that's the way they're lending it. A professional lender or a commercial lending company can be lending with monthly interest payments, points up front. It doesn't matter. It's just the terms on the money. But in the end run, it's just still money with terms. So you just need to find out what the terms are. So what are yours, right? So your sources are cash, loans, private or hard. Banks are another source, right, of loans, of hard money loans. And the question that I get asked a lot of the time is, why would somebody want to borrow, right? Why would you want to give up a piece? Well, the reason for borrowing is to scale. Scaling in the one place. So first, you scale if you don't have enough money on your own, right? Just simply put, you don't have enough, so you need to borrow from someone else in order to be able to do even one deal. Then when you're doing one deal, you want to be able to do multiple deals. That's when you scale up and you borrow money in order to do multiple deals. All right. Then if you still want to do just one deal, but again, you want to scale to a larger dollar amount.
Mark,
same
just
thing.
1 second.
You're-
I'm going to ask I'm going to mute everyone, so I want to make sure that you're still talking.
Thank you.
So I'm good.
Perfect.
So it's scaling. So first, it's scaling if you don't have enough money even for a small deal. Then when you have enough money for one deal, you want to scale to multiple deals. Then when you've scaled to multiple deals, if you want to scale to a large scale deal, that's when you're borrowing. So it's not the idea of I've got to keep every penny. It's the idea of what, by borrowing, you're able to scale up and do more deals. And then we also have, in addition to cash and loans, we have equity partners. So equity partners are a little bit different, right? They're not lending you money. They're actually participating in the company. It's a little bit different structure. It's a partner versus a lender. Okay. So they're actually a member of the LLC together with you. And the terms between you are worked out in the operating agreement. And it's slightly different because of it, right? They're now a member of the LLC doing the project instead of being a lender to it. This is actually, so there's reasons for this and benefits. One of the benefits actually is if you're a member of the LLC, then the experience counts, which it does not when you're just a lender. So there is that difference. Now, and after these three options, essentially you can mix and match all of these options together depending on what your personal scenario is. Okay, so you can borrow hard money from a first position lender. You can borrow some cash from friends and family, let's say in second position if the lender allows it, in unsecured. You can bring in a family member into your LLC as a partner so that the two of you are actually doing the deal together. They're bringing the cash, you're doing the deal, you're borrowing from a professional lender or somebody privately. You can mix and match these options, but essentially they're your own cash, a loan, and an equity partnership. It's as simple as that. So what you should ask is when you're doing it is, how is the financing structured? Right? Are you doing it as a partnership, as a loan? Financing has a cost. So financing has a cost that's upfront, during, and possibly at the end, right? What does this mean? So there may be something upfront, like a fee. With hard money, it's, with professional companies, it's typically called points. So this is what we charge up, for doing the work upfront, analyzing the deal, setting up the closing, doing the underwriting, due diligence, all of that. That fee is just rolled into this one name that's called points. Okay, so that's an upfront fee. Now, with some companies or even with private lenders, you can negotiate to have it moved to the back. Then there's what's known as, what you're paying during, which is the interest, right? So once the money is lent out, you're paying interest on it. Now, again, this may be deferred, maybe not. So that's the fee that's being charged during. And then there may be, again, some kind of payout at the end as well. So, it could be the points that got shifted to the back. It could be interest that got accrued. And by the way, I see questions, so I will happily answer them. And actually, I have answers for them throughout my talk. So there will be a Q&A, and I'll be sure to answer everything you guys want to know. Okay. So, the question is, for example, are the payments being made monthly, or are they accrued towards the end? Right. And there are reasons to do it one way or the other. Are the points up front, or are they at the end? Is it a flat fee or a percentage of the profit, right? What are you getting paid at the end? So let's say with equity partners, a lot of the times it's a split of the profit. And again, are they getting a percentage of the net profit, or are they getting a flat fee at the end for participating? And then you want to know whether there's a draw fee. So a draw fee is the way typically renovations are handled is the work gets done, and then an inspector comes out, and after the inspector checks off what's been completed, the money is wired over, and there's a fee that's charged to pay for that inspector's time and travel. So that's a draw fee. And you want to find out from your lender whether they're charging one or not. And you have to ask yourself, if you're lending money, are you charging it, right? If you're lending to somebody locally and it takes you an hour to travel to see the project and make sure that they did what they said they did, right? Are you charging them for that travel time? Because that's 2 hours of your time. Are you charging anything for it? So then after the sources of capital, we have our documents and best practices. So the documents and best practices essentially, how we structure it and why we do it this way. And this is where it gets interesting, and it's up to you to figure out which of these options you want to go with. So there's a minimum and a full, document list, okay? So at the minimum, you want a deal analysis. So think of it this way. There's 6 things you're going to collect, right? 6 things. You're going to want one deal analysis, and you're going to run your own. You can take somebody else's, but have your own approach to how you analyze a deal to make sure that their numbers are right. That's one of the things we do. We always run our own deal analysis when we have a deal come to us. And if we see anything, we respond back. And those of you who have done business with us, you know that when you fill out a deal, you get back a letter of interest. And additionally, you get a deal summary of the numbers as we see them. Okay. So you want one deal analysis. You want 2 insurances. One is the property insurance. One is the title. And then you want 3 documents, which are the promissory note, the security document, which is a mortgage or a deed, depending on where you are. And lastly is the personal guarantee. That gives you the ability to actually go after the individual personally, in addition to the company that's actually borrowing the money. In my opinion, that's kind of the minimum. Now, there's a full document list, and you can actually look it up on our site. You can visit our YouTube channel, and the full document list is things like a rehab estimate, right? You want to see the rehab budget and the scope of work. What are they doing? You want the purchase and sale contract to see the purchase agreement, right? You want to see the price. You want to see the closing date. Are you running a background check or not? In which case, if you do, you want the borrower authorization done. Now, the question is, for example, why would you run a credit and background check, right? Well, what would a credit report tell you, right? Credit report can tell you if the person is not paying their regular mortgage, right? If they're borrowing money and they're not paying other lenders, what makes you think that they're going to lend to you, right? So that's what a credit report will show you. For example, right? If they're over leveraged, if they're not paying loans. I mean, utilization is one thing. It's quite another if there are a lot of missed payments and things that they're in default on. A background check, again, it's up to you whether you do it or not. We do. A background check is an interesting thing. There are some lenders who will not lend for anything. Okay, anything that pops up, any kind of felony, that's it. It's a dead deal. But at the same time, there are some lenders who look at different felonies, right? It's one thing if it's a bar fight, right? It's one thing if it's hot-headedness, whatever, but it's quite another if the person has larceny or embezzlement on their record, right? And they're coming to you to do business with you. Do you necessarily want to lend to someone who has, fraud on their background? Then, experience. So we collect, for example, an experience portfolio. We lend to beginners, but again, this speaks to the person's knowledge and experience doing projects. And education is one thing, and it's quite another thing when you actually do a project. Real life is something else. So you want to collect their experience, right? And experience is essentially address of the project done. What did you buy it for? How much did you fix it up for? What did you sell it for? Or if you own rentals, what do you own? What's the address? How much are you bringing in rent? What is the mortgage on it? For those of you that don't know, rental sometimes can be measured in dog years. So now, for example, we actually will have an appraisal done. And it's up to you whether you choose to do an appraisal or you're going to comp it yourself, or if you'll accept the comps of a realtor. Now, why do we do an appraisal? Because I don't know necessarily some of the areas where I'm doing business. I don't know if the property is actually going to be worth what the borrower is telling me. And realtors have their own agenda. They want to sell a property. Okay, so they want to sell a property. So unless that realtor's interests are aligned with the borrower, and I can tell this, I mean, and even in your case, you want to know this, right? So for that reason, you want to do an appraisal. Another thing an appraisal will actually tell you is you can order it with a flood search. So you'll actually find out about the flood zone and whether the property has issues with flooding, whether you need to get flood insurance. I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So best practices. Having this kind of picture of options and how you can lend and how it can be done, how do we actually do it, right? So we actually do, monthly payments. Why monthly payments? Because profit is abstract, but a monthly payment stimulates somebody to make, to get the project done. They can't just dilly-dally, right? When they have to make that payment every single month, it spurs them on to get it done a little bit faster, as opposed to saying, I can wait a little bit. What's another month of delay? I'll get it done when I get it done. So you want to have monthly payments. Okay. Another thing is skin in the game. So why skin in the game? Why is that so important? Because it ties the borrower, the person doing the project, it ties them to actually working on it. Because if they have nothing in and the going gets tough, nothing stops them from turning around and saying, you know what, I'm done, I'm out of here. You know what, you take over the property and you handle it. When you're lending, you're not in the business of finishing rehabs. You're in the business of lending. That's it. You want to get them, you want to do a good deal where everybody wins, right? The borrower, your client completes the project. They get paid, you get paid, the person who lives in the house gets a beautiful house to live in, and everybody's happy. You don't want to take over a property. It's costly, it's long potentially, and then you need to figure out what to do with it. And if they had no money in, it costs money. It costs something to take over a property, right? Whether it's legal fees, disposition of it, right? Liquidating it. If you're selling it, you now have to pay somebody to sell it. All of that has a cost. And if you don't have that cushion of skin in the game, it's all on you. It's a loss. So that's the reason why we want everybody to have something. Now, how much is already up to you? It's your preference, but I would suggest that at least the soft costs, all of the fees beyond the purchase and the rehab, should be brought by the client, or by your borrower if it's somebody privately borrowing from you. Now, why reimburse? So we reimburse after work is done. Why? To make sure that it got done. Because if we advance money, same thing. If money is advanced and the person just disappears with it, whether you can go after them legally or not, it's still a hassle. The money's gone. And that's actually the biggest mistake that I had to learn. And I've learned it multiple times and learned it really, really well. Reimburse in draws. So first you get the work done, you inspect, and today, there's so many tools available between Zoom, FaceTime, all of these tools which you can use to see the project live, right? You can verify that it's the actual project as opposed to something else. So you definitely want to inspect that completed work, whether it's yourself over Zoom, whether you hire a third-party inspector to come out and get it inspected and check off what's been completed. Either way, you want to have that inspection and then you reimburse. Why points up front? Because you do work up front, right? So we charge points up front. Why? Because there's work, there's overhead, right? This is my business day in and day out. I have to keep the lights on. I have to pay for my internet. I have to, there's a cost involved right at doing the work. So for that work up front, that's the points. Then afterwards, there's the interest being charged on the money that's outstanding. Full boat or not full boat interest. So this is, again, depending on the lender and depending on the situation. So larger companies will, depending on the source of capital, will have interest charged only on the money you've taken so far. So let's say you're buying a property, they provide the funds to close on it, interest starts accruing on that money. And then when you do draws and once the money is disbursed to reimburse for work, that's when interest starts accruing on that money. Well, some companies can do that and some companies don't have deep enough pockets and they have to charge what's called full boat interest from day one. Why? Because they've set aside that money, right? If somebody privately says, okay, I'm going to lend to you and it's going to be, let's say, 100,000 for purchase and 50,000 for renovation. Even though they're not advancing you the 50,000 for renovation and it's being held until you complete the work, that money is still locked up. They can't use it. They can't use it for another deal. They can't lend it to anybody else. So essentially now this entire sum of money is sitting, waiting for you. And that's why some companies will charge what's known as full boat, right? Interest on the entire amount. On the other hand, some other companies, especially larger ones, like I said, will charge only on the drawn funds. So that's a question, and it's a question for you of how you do it as well. And then lastly, we get to, are you partnering or partner instead of second position? So we all know, or let's just back up. There's first position lending and second position lending. What does this mean? So it's a question of who has first priority when the money from the project needs to be paid out, who gets paid first. Or if something goes wrong with the project and let's say the borrower is not paying, who gets to foreclose on the property, sell it, and recoup their money first, okay? And that's the name, that's the first position, and then there could be a second one. Now, what can happen is the second position can get completely wiped out if the deal goes bad and the property is sold. And this is where it may be advantageous to be a partner instead of being in the second position. Why? Because as a partner, if the person doing the project, for example, something happens to them, they falter themselves or something happens, right? They close on the property, literally, they close on the property, they walk out of the attorney's office, they get hit by a bus, that's it. At that point, as a second position lender, you have no rights to the property. It's a first position's game now, right? They're going to do what they need to do. And if there's something left over, great, you'll get it. But if not, then not. You have no rights to it. On the other hand, even if you're a minority partner, even 10% in the LLC, and the same scenario happens, and it's unfortunate, right? But it can happen. The person walks out of the attorney's office, gets hit by a bus, they're unable to complete it. Well, guess what? As a minority partner, you at least have the right now to complete the project, to liquidate it if you can, for more money potentially than the first position would have tried. And that actually is the benefit of being an equity partner versus a second position lender on it. Okay. So then when you're an equity partner, the question is, are you doing it, are you accruing interest on your money, or are you getting paid equity, right? So while the project is going on, is your money just collecting interest, or are you getting some kind of, some piece of the profit when the project is done? Now, my personal suggestion is that, money should earn money. And at the same time, if you're an equity partner, you get a little, you get a piece of the profit as well. So you can charge a smaller interest rate, but then also you participate in the upside of it. So the better the project does, the more you get, the worse it does, the less you get. But whatever money you and your partner bring in, you should be earning interest on, both of you should be earning interest on it. So that's, sorry, 1 second. So that's, these are the questions that I want you to consider, right, as we go through my case study, right, and why it's done the way it's done. And so it is almost Halloween. So in the spirit of Halloween tonight, I'm going to tell you some horror stories. And with that, let me pull up my some photos, and Andrea, if I could share my screen. All right. So, I think this pretty much accurately sums it up, right? I love lending people money and never getting paid back, said no one ever. So, okay. So the case study I'm going to show you guys is a project that I did in North Carolina. And I'm going to show you the timeline for this, just so you get an idea of what happened, how long it took me to deal with it, and I'll also tell you the lessons I pulled out of it. Okay. So this is the property right here, right? And this is first to wow you. Okay, so we'll start with the end first. The property, we finished the renovation, we staged it, we sold it. Wonderful. Okay, beautiful property. And by the way, yes, you should stage. It's worth it. It definitely shows a very different, property. So yes, you should. Now, actually, so we'll talk about this in a second. So the timeline was, we bought this property in August. Sorry, timeline. We bought it in August of 2018. Okay, that's when I lent on this property. And the way we did it was, we had partners that we were working with, and we split the loan 50-50. So we provided funds towards purchase and renovation. The minor fees, our borrowers did it. And the way this deal was set up was, it was an equity split at the end. Okay, so we put up all of the money, and at the end, the profit was going to be split 50-50. And, I can show you the analysis of it. The bottom line that you should take away from it was, as an equity deal, my borrowers would have ended up getting $10,000. And this is why I say now you should start analyzing deals yourself and have some criteria for it. Because if I had really realized what they were getting into, it's a reason maybe I would have done this differently. But so the way it was set up was an equity, we lent to them, but then we were getting 50% of the profit. All right. So between August and March, this project sat. Why did it sit? Because we actually had other projects at the same time with them. So our own projects backed this one up. Okay, we stalled out on it because of it. Also, what was happening is that we weren't aware of, and this is where you want to find out what's going on in people's lives. There were other projects even beyond the ones they were working on with us that they were in trouble on, until finally in March of 19, we got the call that, we're actually going into bankruptcy. we took the money that you guys provided to us for the renovation, the 30,000 that was provided for renovation, we used it on other projects to finish them in the expectation that when those projects finish, we sell them at a profit, recoup the money, put it back here, and everything moves on, except those projects did not perform how they were supposed to, and so that money's gone. Okay, so they tell us this. So now we're looking at a property that's still worth exactly what we bought it for, except now 30,000 of renovation funds is gone. And so we're faced with, what do we do, right? Do we just sell it and walk away from that loss? Or the other option is, do we take over the property, finish the renovation ourselves, and hopefully recoup our money? We decided to finish the renovation for the experience, to recoup our money. You know, what I like to say is that our parting was, you know, an amicable divorce. So we're still on good terms. You know, it is what it is, but they were still able to, these investors were still able to help us out to finish out the project. But this is the big lesson, right? Lesson number one, reimburse for work done. It wasn't malicious, right? They got into trouble. They didn't want to tell us. They did what they could do. But if I simply had held back that $30,000 for renovation until they had sent us photos of work completed, right? Photos, video, you know, whatever, none of this would have happened. But because they already had the money and had the ability to spend it, now is a question of recouping it, but there's nothing there, right? They're going bankrupt. So, all right. So it is what it is. We're going to have to take it back. And then in March of 19, hurricanes hit North Carolina. Perhaps some of you remember this. And North Carolina gets flooded. So it gets flooded, massive damage. So we have a shortage of people to work on things, not to mention that the basement of the crawl space of this property got flooded. Now we had flood insurance, and this is why I say it's important to know what kind of insurance you need, whether you're in a floodplain, do you need to have flood insurance? Because we had it. So we had to deal with, you know, insurance paying out for the flooding, and there was some, you know, moisture to the floor. The house itself sits on a crawl space. So we had to put in a sump pump. Luckily, insurance paid for it, but it took them months to even come out. The entire area was in trouble. So by the time they got to us, it was a couple of months later. Now, I don't want to transfer a property with issues to my name and then have to deal with it. So because of it, this property is sitting there still in our, right, in our borrower's name. We're waiting for the insurance to get, you know, taken care of so that everything gets paid, and then we'll transfer it. So this is why a flood cert, for example, is a good idea, to know about the floodplain. So then July, we finally, you know, we take care of it. I started looking for somebody to complete the renovation, whether in, you know, New York to bring them down to North Carolina, or whether in North Carolina to take care of it. And I reached out to an attorney to start the process of transferring the property to us via a deed in lieu. So a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So instead of a foreclosure process, you just simply have, you know, the borrower just signs the property over to you. And so that's a different way of handling it. And started working with an attorney in October, and finally in November, we transferred the property to us, right? We opened up a local North Carolina LLC, transferred the property into it, and transferred the property. Excellent. Luckily, by December, we found somebody to work on it and started the renovation. Here, let's talk about handling draws. So here's another best
Practices.
So here are your best practices, again, for handling draws. So let's look at the draws. So the budget actually ended up ballooning a little bit because of what I chose to do. But just to give you an idea of the way I had it set up, was I had my entire budget, right? So everything that's got to be done is here. And the total budget was $6,700. It ended up being more than that, but we'll get to that later. So this was all the things that needed to get done. So the contractor that was going to be doing it for us, we agreed that she would, you know, that she would charge $1,000 upfront for materials. Now, so yes, I'm telling you, do not pay for anything up front, but material, that she needed for the job, I could understand it. And $1,000 was so minute in the grand scheme of this. I was willing to take that risk. Okay. So I forwarded her $1,000 for materials, sheetrock, plaster, etc. And they started work. Now, the agreement she and I had made was that I would advance $1,000 as a deposit, and then there would be 3 phases of work. Okay. And the 3 phases would be, essentially at the end of phase 1, I would pay $2,000. At the end of phase 2, I would pay $2,000. And then at the end of the 3rd one, I would pay the remaining balance. Here's the lesson. So the way you should do it is you take all of your itemized, your items, you put them into a phase, and then you total it up. So when a phase is done, you pay what the total for that phase is. It doesn't matter how many times somebody draws. It's just a question of what did you complete. So you've got an agreement initially before the project even starts of what they're going to do and how much it's going to cost. Now you just check off what has been done. So luckily, the numbers on this deal were so small that it's insignificant, but it shows you, it illustrates the mistake I made, which was when I agreed to a $2,000 phase, what we were actually finishing in that first phase was only $1,695 of work. Okay. So I was ahead in payments compared to the work. Now in phase number 2, as you can see, the total of the phase was actually a little bit more than I was paying. So I kind of caught up, and then the entire thing got reconciled in phase 3. But if in phase 1, I'm ahead by $300, $300 is not a big deal. But what if it's $3,000 and then the contractor disappears on you? What if it's $30,000 and they disappear on you? It gets worse. So luckily I got this lesson when it was cheap enough, and I can share this with you guys. So that is how to handle draws and how to handle renovation, right? So you've got your total budget, labor and parts combined, and then you just simply have, and it doesn't have to be, I had it split up into phases. It doesn't matter. As long as, let's say your inspector comes out, or the person who's borrowing from you, they come back to you and they say, okay, I've completed this thing, this thing, this thing, and this thing. Total up what they've done, and that's how much you reimburse. That's how I do it now. So let's go back to the timeline. So this was the draws. Then there was the final inspection. So when she was done, she was supposed to send me photos of the completed work. Well, let's take a look at the photos. So she's done. Hang on a second. Okay, we're done. They were supposed to paint the door, okay? And obviously all the trash was supposed to be removed. So these are the photos that I receive as work is done, okay? Beautiful. Wouldn't you agree? Right? Raise your hand, right? Excellent. Okay. So beautifully painted door. Everything is fine until my stager shows up. Okay, everything is done, right? That's what I've been told. And my stager shows up, and my stager says, there is a pile of trash here. And I said, really? You don't say. And this is the photo that she sends me. That's what the photo didn't show of the door. And then, so there's the pile of trash, and inside where everything is already supposed to be ready for staging, guess what? There's still materials and paint buckets and things like that. I have a stager coming. And for those of you who don't know, staging, there's, it's a monthly fee and there's a charge. So time's ticking. So, this is a lesson in a couple of things. First of all, again, with a video, I would have seen it, right? Number one, I would have asked, also ask them to back away and take a photo this way, right from the driveway, right from the street. And don't pay until you know that everything is truly done, right? Have something left over in reserve that you can still control them with, because once you've made that last payment, guess what? They're gone. So, then, this is the this is what we ended up with. By the way, what I forgot to show you guys, and I'll show you now, is some before pictures. Or actually, I don't have like, I didn't, it's not before. I'll show you just the unstage, just so you get a little perspective of the different staging makes. And even I kind of wanted to save a buck, but then I'm glad that cooler heads prevailed and told me to stage. So this is what the property looks like, right, without staging in it. And then, just to remind you, this is what it looks like when it's staged. So there is quite the difference. So my stager comes, right? So she acted as my, a third-party inspector, essentially checking what's been done. So she sends me the photos. I find out that, hey, this isn't, there's still trash there. All right, we figure it out. Wonderful. She stages it. What's funny is my contractor still had to come back to finish something up. And when she came back, she sent me a photo saying, listen, are you sure you want to stage it this way? What happened? Well, the place was staged with books, and this is the one that was laying right up front, out on the TV stand. Now, I'm not getting into politics. It's irrelevant. The main thing is I'm interested in selling a property. Whether a liberal comes in or a conservative comes in, they're going to react to that book. That reaction may be positive, that reaction may be negative, but they're focused on the book instead of focusing on the house and buying it. I don't care. I need to sell a property. What I had my contractor do was take this book, put it inside the drawer of the TV stand, and make it disappear. I don't care if somebody already opens up that drawer and then sees it there. It is what it is, but at least I took a step. It seems silly, it seems funny, but this is something you need to be aware of and be considerate of, that this can happen. So as silly as it is, when your property gets staged and they put out books, what books did they put out? So we go from there, right? So we have it staged. I start looking for an agent to I get an agent to sell it and find out that the deed was not recorded by the attorney. So I have to go back to the attorney, get the deed in lieu recorded. Okay, get that done. So I sign with an agent. The property is listed in February of 20. Oh joy, March comes. For those of you who may not be aware, the entire country goes into shutdown mode. And from March till May, June, I'm sitting on this property that's hemorrhaging money on a daily basis. I'm paying for electricity. I'm paying for, luckily not water, but I'm paying for electricity because I can't leave it in the summer without an air conditioner. So I'm paying for electricity. I'm paying for the lawn. I'm paying for staging. I'm paying for insurance, right? All of this is being paid for, right? So every single day is affecting the bottom line. There's no movement. We dropped price. We had some feedback, so we dropped the price. We dropped the price. In June, we have an offer accepted. But wait, there's more horrors coming, guys. So the offer is accepted, and the property gets inspected. Now, it's a VA loan. So because it's a VA loan, the property has to be completely finished, right? There's no work that I can leave over for the new owners. So, okay, the inspector comes out, gives us an inspection list for the property itself, and then he's like, there's something wrong in the backyard. Okay, there's something wrong in the backyard. What's wrong with the backyard? Well, it's soggy. Okay, so they have an inspector for the appraisal, right? The VA appraisal, and they have the inspector, just a property inspector. Well, the property inspector takes a shovel, digs into the soil, and finds out there's crap in there. Turns out there's an issue with septic. Okay, there's an issue with septic. Turns out that all the way back in 2005, a permit was opened to replace the septic and never got done. Okay, now, here's a lesson for you guys. When you do a title search with municipals, okay? And here's what happened. I've bought and sold houses in New York. In New York, this is done as part of the normal course. Okay, when you do a title search, they automatically do or at least typically they'll do it with municipals, which means they'll also tell you what the violations, the building code violations on the property are. Not in North Carolina. It wasn't done. So because of it, see, what should have happened is when my borrower was buying this property, they should have done that search. By the time they already bought it, by the time we were taking it over, it didn't matter, right? We needed to resolve it. So I still would have done what I did. But initially, if they would have done a title search and found out this open permit that never got, that the work never got completed on, then we could have had a conversation. Then they could have renegotiated price. They could have done something about it. But by now, it's too late. Luckily, it's not too late for me to learn this lesson and to be able to pass it on to all of you. Do a title search with municipals when you're buying a property. Find out if there are any building code violations. So we find out there's an issue with the septic. All right, what do we have to do? We have to replace a septic system. For those of you who don't know, the bill was $14,000. Okay, so my profit essentially at this point, we're no longer looking for profit, right? With every month, it was a question of, oh, maybe it's profit, maybe not. We're draining it away, we're draining it away, we're draining it away. Now we're no longer looking at profit. Now we're just looking to break even, okay? So then we find out about the septic. All right, so we have to find somebody. All right, so we start looking for somebody to do a septic repair. By this point, it is July of 20. I've been dealing with this property for 2 years. I'm tired. And so luckily, my partners are very good people. We're friends. And at that point, I picked up the phone and I said, listen, I need your help. Can you find a septic company to take care of this? Like, can you push this over the finish line? My partner said, yes, great. In the meantime, I found a handyman to finish the other issues that were discovered in the inspection and the appraisal. We find a septic company. Well, guess what? The ground is soggy. They've got heavy rains. So we miss June or July. And by the way, if you didn't know, in North Carolina, even to get a quote, you need to get a permit. So we needed to get a new permit issued until finally the septic company could come out, give us a quote for what it's going to be to fix it. And then now we're waiting because they can't pull a truck in there. Everything is so wet, they can't pull a truck in. In the end run, they ended up dumping a few $100s worth of sand in order to pack the ground more so that they could pull the truck in, so that they could offload the bulldozer that then dug the hole for the tank for the septic system. Excellent. Funny story about that. So when they were doing it, they took down the fence that's on the side of the house in order to get the truck in, and they were going to fix it. In fact, so they were going to fix that. And when they were pulling in, they knocked down the mailbox of the neighbor. They left a note for the neighbor. The neighbor disregarded the note, disregarded the fact that they told him, we'll take care of it. Just, we literally just finished. So he starts complaining to the BBB. He starts, calling. I have to get involved in all of this. What's funny is we're closing. I can't have the fence down. I wasn't aware that the septic guys were going to fix it. So I called up the handyman and I said, listen, can you fix it? He said, yes. So to show you what that looked like, I mean, not that it's a big deal, just fun with pictures. Hang on. So fence down. All right. So essentially we've got the fence down. Right, this is basically them doing the mound, and then, this is the day of basically the day of closing. In the morning, the fence is back up. I've got my handyman out there to fix it, and we resolved issues with the neighbors who are screaming and complaining about their mailbox. Fine, we're done. We close. Amen. Except I get to find out that last bit with this property because it just couldn't end that way. No, I find out that I need a bank account in the name of the LLC to, who holds the deed in order to be able to get the money wired in from the, the proceeds. I don't have a bank account. Again, if none of you are aware, the entire country's in panic mode. So now I have to go to a bank to open up a bank account. 3 hours of my life gone for that. Dealing with the fact that the property is there, the LLC is here, and it's multiple LLCs, opening, who are members of an LLC in a different state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I got the bank account opened. I had the money wired in. We're done. This story took me from August of 18 till September 14th this year. That is 761 days for this deal. Okay. I'll show you the expenses. So a good thing that actually ended up happening out of this is also just how to keep track of your expenses. Write down everything. So as you can see, this is the money we lent out, right? And then it just runs, here's all of the expenses, just running down this list of everything that was done. Now, the renovations ended up being more because we decided to do more work than initially agreed. So we decided to finish the floors everywhere instead of just the kitchen. And then the septic got, added into it. There's, lawn care that had to get done, water, electricity, staging, right? Wood, inspections. So in the end run, it cost us an additional $39,000 to get this property renovated, in addition to the $98,000 of purchase. We ended up selling it actually for $2,000 less than the initial ARV. So that was pretty cool. And actually, what's also funny is if I was selling it probably a month or two later, probably we would have ended up selling it for more as, real estate started moving, but we just needed it gone. And what's interesting is it's not even about the money, it's the time. The drain on, the drain of my time and energy that went into this. The fact that I had to resolve this issue instead of just being able to focus on my other businesses and priorities. So the bottom line, as you can see, these are all the costs. And in the end run, we walked away with a $20,000 loss on this investment, which is actually better than what would have happened had we just taken our lumps initially. So, and most importantly, the lessons learned. And this, I cannot stress enough. There is no such thing as a loss. It's always lessons learned. Learn your lessons when you're dealing with thousands so that you don't have to learn them when you're dealing with millions. Believe me on that. Learn your lessons. So this was this one deal. Now, I don't have any more. Oh, actually, just before we go, so I wanted to show you the deal analysis of it, right? So this was, so here, as I mentioned, you should do an analysis as cash and then overlay other options onto it to be able to compare.
For me or for Vicky?
Now, this.
I don't know if she's gonna want it because it's gonna be like
Please,
too.
please unmute yourself.
Oh, I can mute everybody. I can mute people. All right. So what I wanted to show you was this deal analyzer that I have. So this is my own creation, and you guys are welcome to it. Okay. This is a deal analyzer available on our site under resources. It's for fix and flips. And what you can do here is you can select different options for your financing and fill it in. And the detailed and simple summaries will update. And so over here, you put in the project, your information for the project itself, right? Your purchase price, your renovation cost, ARV. And from here, you then go over and start selecting what your financing option is. And it's different for everybody. And as you go through it, right, different options light up, plug it in, and you end up with a summary. And after the summary, what I would suggest is when you're done, plug in the actuals in this column, and you're going to have a delta appear of what did you project and what did you end up with, right? So KPIs, key performance indicators, right? You were projecting an ARV of 335. Great. What did you actually sell it for? Did you actually sell it for 335 or did you go for more, less? And you'll start getting this data. So as I said, you're welcome to download this on MIRS Group's site. Okay, so that's the project that we ended up doing. And I just want to see if there are any more photos in there to show. No, that's it. So I'm going to revert this over to Andrea, and I'll still tell you guys one more horror story because it's Halloween, hang on, stop share. And
I got it back.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about my second horror story. The second horror story.
Come on, you have to have some good stories, not all bad.
No, they're not bad. But as I said, this is Halloween, so that's why I'm telling you guys the horror stories. Okay. And besides, the biggest lessons I learned were with the horrors, not with the smooth, easy transactions. So here's another one for you, right? How long does a foreclosure take and what is the cost? It can take years. And the cost, aside from the money, is time. Time is everything. It's much more precious even than the money. So what's interesting is with the case study that I showed you guys, there were items that so some things I couldn't do anything about, right? I had to do the septic. I couldn't just give them money. I had to take care of the fence. I couldn't give them money because it was part of the VA appraisal. But what I could do was, for example, on the inspection, it turned out that one of the windows or two of the windows had issues with fogging inside and issues with the hardware. And to replace them would have just been prohibitive. I can't tear open walls to replace windows. So I just turned around and I said, you know what, I'll credit you $200 if we can agree on it. I'll credit back $200. We'll knock it off the price. Are you in agreement? They said yes. $200 was a cheap price to pay. So money, to me, time is even worse. It's the money is painful, but time is everything. So I have another story about Detroit. Same exact mistake. Okay, I've made the same mistake repeatedly. It was in the beginning. So it's advancing money for renovation without having the work done first. Okay, so advance the money. It wasn't significant, right? Two loans, one for 25,000, one for 30. All right, $50,000. Well, after 4 months, this person started ghosting me, and it took me going through an attorney to get any kind of response. So finally, I have, one they're finishing out and they're going to pay me on. The second one, I took it over, but this is the lesson I learned about doing a title search. At the time, I hadn't done it. I didn't go through an attorney. What happened was the property was purchased from the Detroit Land Bank Authority. For those of you who don't know, it's an organization in Detroit to revitalize it. So they sell properties for dirt cheap just so they can get work done, but they don't release their interest in it. So right now, I've been banging my head on the wall for 3 weeks with the DLBA, trying to get them to tell me what I could do to the property. What do they want me to do to the property so that it would be finished to their requirements, and then I could sell it so that, and they would release their interest, I could sell it, and everybody's happy. 3 weeks of bouncing around on the phone between hold times and everybody telling me, well, you're not on this property. Okay, well, here's my power of attorney to deal with it. It's not an amicable divorce here, right? I can't do anything, right? This person is not going to respond to me. So we need to resolve this. And I'm trying to get a property done so that you guys have a well-done property, right? You have instead of blight, and everybody walks away happy. 3 weeks of battle. But here's the funnier story about it. When at the time I had them send me basically copies and original, signed originals of the promissory note, personal guarantee, and the mortgage. Well, I had them sign in every single state that I'm aware of, in every county. And this is why you should use a title company. In every place I know of, you use a blue pen to sign so that you can tell what's the original and what's the copy, except for Detroit. Apparently, that's the one place in the country where it has to be black. So when I went to try to record the mortgage, surprise, it's in the wrong color ink. Yeah, that was a fun adventure. I still don't know how exactly it got recorded digitally online, but it did. But my point is, this is why you should use a title company for the closing, whether it, in an attorney state, typically the attorney will serve that purpose. But if it's not an attorney state, use a title company because they'll know the local regulations for that. Okay, they're going to know what color ink. They're going to know if it's a deed or a mortgage. They're going to know all of the ins and outs, and they'll make sure that it gets done correctly. So that's the second horror story that I had prepared for tonight. Now, from here, Q&A, ask me whatever you want to ask. I'll be happy to answer questions, and yeah.
Mark,
Yeah.
Denise up here.
Hi, Denise.
How are you? I'm just, thank you for the beautiful talk. Your North Carolina disaster is mirroring my North Carolina disaster. So
Okay.
good to know. I'm just curious, why should we have these promissory notes and personal guarantees sold if these people can walk and it costs so much money in legal fees to try and recoup? I mean, what's the purpose? They know that if they just walk away, you know, their attorney will probably give you the deed in lieu. And as with your construction money, lost it, we'll end up, we're going to lose our construction money because, you know, he's gone, he doesn't have any money, he says. So why have that personally signed if you can't enforce it without it costing you thousands of dollars in legal fees?
Well, you could, right? So so that is why you have it, because you could enforce it even though it's going to cost you. So it becomes a question of return on investment, right? Is it worth it to go after them to try to recoup it? Not to mention, see, the idea is not to be out so much. That's the mistake I made. If I hadn't advanced the $30,000 of renovation funds, right, then what? We've got a property that's worth pretty much what we paid, you know, what we lent on it. I could have just sold it and walked away. Same story in Detroit. If I hadn't advanced the money and I was simply waiting for them to do the work and then reimburse them, then what are we talking about? What's the potential loss? A couple of $1,000s. Well, for that, I could take them to small claims court and recoup it, right? Or at least leave it hanging on their record. So again, this goes back to background searches, right? When you run a background and credit check, guess what? You'll see a civil suit on there. You'll see a judgment.
So if I do a small claims court on him, it'll at least ding his credit.
I believe so.
Okay.
That's a question. I mean, I haven't, great question. I don't know. I didn't do it that way. So I simply don't know. I don't have that experience.
He's going to walk away with nothing on his background. So some other poor lender is going to walk into a deal with him.
That's my point. Talk to your attorney about what happens or how to get it reported so that it does end up on their background and credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then one extra listen to me.
Question, sure.
What software you use to keep track of your expenses and payout? Is that?
That was just Excel.
Excel?
Yeah.
And you made your own columns and stuff, and that's how you did it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I use my wife. That's what I do.
Mark, it's Arlene Thorpe. I have a question for you.
Sure. Hi, Arlene.
How's it going?
Going good.
Do you have on your website, you said you have a bunch of tools. Do you have, like, what tools you use for doing background check and credit?
So I don't have it as much as a tool. I have it available to me. It's through CIC Credit.
Okay.
That's the company. And that's who I use. But there are,
Credit?
yeah.
Is it just like a subscription service? Is there a per hit?
I get no, it's per use. I have
Okay.
I simply have available to me like through I have a back end platform that I get to use that I pay for, and part of it is the ability to run background and credit through.
Okay.
But you could do it yourself through them as well, or just find a legitimate service.
Okay.
Mhm.
It's always nice to have a reference of a one that someone used. That's why I asked. I mean,
Right. CIC Credit.
Anyone else have any questions?
Okay, so I'm looking, hold on, I have a question here. Do I typically get the deed copy directly from the title company or from the investor that borrowed money? No, the title company. And I have my attorney typically handle my closings right now. I mean, if you're doing one-offs, it's a little bit different. In my case, I have, deal after deal. So because of it, I have my attorney handle it for me. right? So he'll, you know, reach out to title, get title insurance, the title policy the way we want it. He'll schedule the closing, get their wire information, and then I just know the day, you know, when and where to wire the funds, and we're good to go. So no, the title company, you don't want to rely on the borrower for anything. It's the title company that has the document, you know, is responsible for getting everything signed. It's the title company that's responsible for getting it recorded. It's the title company that's providing you with title insurance. So in case there's any issues, in case there's any fraud, if the person who's, you know, selling the property is not the person who's supposed to be selling it, right? That's what protects your funds on it.
You pass all those costs off to the borrower, correct?
Yeah. So look, let's talk about costs and fees a little bit. Realistically, everything is paid for by the borrower. Just because I tell you, I give you a, right? Like, so let's say I told somebody, all right, I'm gonna, you know, what's the trick that so many companies use, right? They'll jack up the price and then give you a discount. Tomato, right? So in the end run, everything is paid for by the borrower, right? There's some amount of money that I want to earn for what I'm doing. And then there are a bunch of other fees, right? My attorney charges me for handling things for me, right? Writing contracts, scheduling the closing. So that's a cost that I have. So I pass it on. By the way, speaking of fees, here's a comment. I see a lot of times on Facebook, on, you know, in different places where people are asking, hey, what should I pay? Or is it okay if I pay something up front? Typically, legitimate lenders don't ask you to pay anything up front. Everything is done at closing. The only fees you realistically end up paying before closing are an appraisal fee, but that is going right to the appraisal company. Okay, it's a few $100s for the appraisal. And potentially some companies have an underwriting fee or an application fee, but that fee will be a few $100s. And what it does is it just makes sure that people aren't wasting time. And what they'll also do is they'll possibly credit that money towards the closing anyway, right? Or if you don't close on this one, they'll credit it later. But essentially, outside of a couple of $100s here and there for some kind of fee and then an appraisal, you should not be paying, you know, anything before money gets moved at closing. None of this, we need 2.5% to finalize some kind of paperwork and we're going to send you money. That's a scam. And by the way, if it sounds too good to be true in terms of interest rates, it probably is. It's a scam. Okay. If everybody's telling you, if every hard money lender is telling you that they're going to charge, you know, 10 to 12%, and private money, you know, is running anywhere between 8 and 12%, right? Or 15 even. If somebody shows up on the internet telling you, we're going to give you a 30-year loan at 5%, ballooning at the end, run. Don't walk, run.
I have a question,
Mark,
Mark, about vetting it.
No,
I'm
I was
sorry.
just looking if there's any more questions, but I don't see one. So
Would you make me the presenter, please?
I have one.
sure. How do I do it? One second. How do I make it the presenter?
Go to participants,
Yeah.
click my name, and it says make me a participant or make me the host. Sorry.
Here the co-host. Okay, more. Make host. Okay.
Thank you. Now I can
Done.
see what's going
Okay.
on. Thanks.
Yeah. Somebody had a question.
Yeah, I have a question about an attorney.
Mhm.
So what are the, how do you vet an attorney? I mean,
Do a deal with them. I don't really have, I'll tell you how I found mine. I reached out. So the first person I worked with, I didn't like. By deal number 2, he basically disappeared on me for a couple of days with no response. I'm supposed to be closing and he's MIA. And then he finally gets back to me, and luckily the deal got pushed back, but he gets back to me. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. I was busy with court cases. It's been 3 days. Like, what am I supposed to do? So that was not happening. So I reached out to a wealth management company I deal with, and I called them up and they said, hey, can you guys recommend an attorney that handles lending and real estate? And they said, sure. So they referred me to my attorney. What's really funny is that afterwards I found out multiple hard money companies I work with, like Capital Partners and hard money lenders, et cetera, they're all using that firm. So I ended up working with them. One of the partners is my attorney. And Why do I use him? He's responsive, he knows what he's doing, and basically he's a guide. So that's why I use them and refer them.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep. For those of you in the New York, New Jersey area, by the way, that's where they're located, and they'll do Washington. They handle Washington D.C. as well. So it's you could look them up online. It's Hartman Doherty.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain how you, two things. One, who pays for that appraisal and how do you word it to your potential borrower that they're paying for it? And two, how do you set up their skin in the game? How do you work that word-wise into the documents and stuff, what you're willing to lend and what you expect them to put in as skin?
Okay. So let's talk LTVs and appraisal. So appraisal, there's nothing much to wording it. I just pretty much bluntly tell them we're going to need an appraisal, and they're going to get a payment link directly from the appraisal company. That's it.
Can I interrupt you for a minute, Mark? As far as an appraisal goes, if you don't have an appraisal that's been done in a reasonable time frame, whether you're dealing with a private money lender or not, you're going to want to make sure you know what your area is that you actually own. And I'll tell you a horror story about my brother-in-law. He did not get title. He did not get an appraisal because he had a family member doing his closing for him. The neighbor next door actually owned 1/2 of his circular driveway, and they took it away from him. So you want an appraisal to know where your property line ends, and your title company isn't going to make you get one. But if you haven't had one, you don't have good boundaries, I highly recommend an appraisal, even if there's no private money lender involved. Sorry, but I just wanted to make sure.
No worries. By the way, before I get into the appraisal and documents, let's talk about one thing. There is a group on Facebook called REI Blacklist. So it's a place where you can find if there's any dirt on someone and potentially post your own if there's a horror story. Now, so getting back to the appraisal. So essentially, I just tell people I need an appraisal. I don't know your area. I don't know what properties are selling for in that area. I'm far away. So for that reason, I just say I'm going to need an appraisal. The payment link is going to come to you, directly from the appraisal company, and that's the appraisal. Okay. And what we get in an appraisal, in addition to the flood cert, we also get the as-is value, and we get the after repair value. So in order to get that appraisal done, I actually need to provide the scope of work or repair estimate to the appraiser so that they could calculate the value. Okay. Why do we want as is? Because I want to make sure that you're buying at a discount, right? That the borrower is buying at a discount, not overpaying for a property. Because again, it's, they're buying it literally. Again, let's not talk about anything nefarious and foul play. They're trying to defraud you. Let's just say, simply put, they walk out of the attorney's office, and again, that bus comes along. I mean, that bus is a serial killer today, but the bus comes along and hits them. You're stuck now with a property that's worth only what it was purchased for today. Now, I understand, it is possible that the spread when the work is done is going to be vast. But if they overpaid $20,000 for it today, you're now stuck with a property that's worth $20,000 less than what you paid for it. You don't want that. So you want an as-is value, and you want an after repair value. Okay. And typically loans will get limited by some percentage of after repair. So let's talk LTVs, right? Let's talk about percentages. So how do you make sure there's skin in the game? Well, the only way you can control it is at purchase, realistically. So you say, we're going to provide 80, 90, whatever percent of the purchase price. The remaining 10 to 20% has to come from the borrower. Now, as I said, it depends on your relationship. It depends on the numbers, right? If all of the fees and soft costs are like $20,000 and you push to 100% of the purchase, it's still okay. They've put in enough. Okay, they've put in enough where you can trust that they're not just going to disappear on you. Now, renovations, we typically provide 100%. As a mentor of mine told me when he was explaining this to me, he said, a half-finished house helps no one. You want to make sure that they have enough money to finish the renovation. So you want to be providing 100% of the renovation. And finally, you provide up to some ARV limit, right? Up to 70, anywhere between 65 and 75% of the after repair value is the maximum loan amount. Okay, you have to limit it somehow, right? You want to make sure that there's enough money left over for profit, for expenses, etc. So you limit to the ARV. Now the way, so let's say the value comes in and the total amount they're going to need is a little bit over your ARV limit. So the way you do it is, let's say it's 70%. You subtract, you take 70% of ARV, you subtract the repairs 100%, and whatever is the remainder, that's the maximum loan amount towards purchase that you can provide. And it's either going to be more than if you initially said 80%, or it's going to be less than that. Now the person has to bring more out of pocket. So that's how the percentages work. And you just word it right in the document, right? I mean, in the purchase, in the promissory note, right? So this is all done prior to the promissory notes and everything else already. We negotiate, right? I say, okay, for your deal, I can do 80% of purchase. I can do 100% of renovation, up to 70% of ARV. And this is the interest rate and points we're going to charge. Are we in agreement? Yes, we're in agreement. Excellent. That's when the documents are drafted up, and they're the documents that are provided to the closing. So there's no surprise. It's not a mystery that, oh, hey, by the way, this is the percentage we're providing. And based on what the percentages are, that's the loan amount.
Can I interrupt you for a minute?
I'm sorry?
Can I interrupt you for a moment?
Yeah, of course.
So you can clarify something? I don't know if I'm the only one who really doesn't quite get it. You said 70% of purchase price and
80% of purchase,
80% of purchase,
100% of renovation,
100% of reno,
and up to some kind of limit.
so you add those two together, and it can't go over 70% of ARV?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. That is correct.
Any more questions?
Yes, hi, I have a question.
Sure. Who's
This
speaking?
is Diana Baxter.
Hi, Diana.
Hi. I have a question because I'm fairly new to real estate investing, and I do have a rental property that I purchased a little over a year ago, and I'm trying to do a cash out refinance.
Okay.
And so my question was, well, it's a two-part question. First of all, there was a headache trying to find a lender who doesn't ghost you, but that's not my question. My question is, I was just offered 30-year fix, or this is a no-doc loan. So 30-year fixed at 7.1% seems a little high to me. Just want to know what you think. And also closing costs, 5,000 to 5,500 sounds kind of high as well. So I just want to get an idea, is this too much?
Okay, so let's look at it. First of all, a no-doc loan, we offer those. So essentially, you're describing what we provide, a 30-year no-doc loan. Now let's look. So I need a value. What's the amount they're providing?
They said they're going to provide us up to 75%.
So what's the actual dollar amount?
Okay, I'm doing a cash out refinance.
Yep.
So I think because I owe somewhere around 112, I purchased the property for 179.9. It's worth somewhere around 183, 187, something like that. And so I expect to get 25,000 approximately cash.
Right, but what's the loan amount? 100-something thousand, right?
Yeah, it's
okay. So it's 100-something thousand, and they're charging you $5,000 in fees.
Yeah, that's what he told me it would be, which sounded kind of high, and the interest sounded high too.
Okay, so let me. I'll fill you in on this. So depending on credit score, interest on a 30-year mortgage runs between high 4s and low 7s. So in and of itself, a 7% interest rate is fine, right? But what I would expect is with that 7% interest rate. Now, again, I don't know your credit score. I don't know anything about the property.
758, somewhere around there.
All right, so good enough. And without knowing anything else, I would say, okay, at 7%, what you should be looking at is, let's say, and I'm shooting from the hip here, okay? You should be looking at 2 points, which would be about $2,000. You're going to be looking at an appraisal, a legal fee of about 1,000. So that's 3K. And you're going to pay for an appraisal, whatever that is, $600 to $800, right? So that's what you should be expecting as fees.
About 4,000, less than 4,000.
Yeah, just about, right? So that's for a 7% interest rate. Now, as you start buying down the interest rate, you're going to end up increasing the points that you're paying. So just to give you a little perspective, I have a client, we closed out a cash out refi, and the loan amount was just about 100,000, okay? And he purposely bought down the rate. So he ended up paying 5 points, but he ended up with 4.95% interest. So his total fees were 5 points, so that's about 5K, $995 legal, so that's 6K, and an appraisal.
And this is for a rental?
This is a
Yeah,
30-year
this is
rental,
a
yeah,
duplex.
30-year fixed.
Yeah, but
Sounds
here's the
high.
thing. Right now I have a non-recourse loan on it, and it's at 4.5%. That's why 7.1 sounds so high to me. And I was never offered to an option of buying down. And
Because
if it
if
should
you're-
be, if the closing cost should be less than 4,000, then 5,000 to 5,500 also sounds too high.
is your loan with a conventional bank or is it with a hard money lender?
I don't know yet because I just got
No,
the
the
terms
one that
today.
you have.
No. The one you have today.
The one I assume that it's probably not going to be with a conventional bank, but I
Who
don't
you
know.
have it with
No.
now? The
Who
one
do
that
you
you
have?
have.
Now I have it with
4%.
it's like a private lender, non-recourse loan at 4.5%. It came, I bought a turnkey property, and so this was already set up that way.
Okay, so you have two options. First of all, go to a bank that accepts LLCs where you can
Mhm.
get
credit
a lower rate, as long as your credit score is good enough, and your rent to value is good enough. You should be able to get a
Well, I
traditional
wanted
loan
a no-doc loan
with
because
lows. Okay,
I wanted to no, Declan, I'm sorry to interrupt you. It's
No.
just that because when you start looking at numbers like debt to credit, or how much here when you your income tax, and when you look at the income tax, because I just did what do you call it, cost segregation, because they also provided cost segregation for me when the
on a
bill.
single family.
No, it's a duplex, but when the builder built all these duplexes, this is new construction, they provided cost segregation, which is like not a typical thing that they do, like that builders do, but they did, and I took advantage of it. So it looks like I didn't make any money this year. That's why going to the bank and providing documents is going to be an issue. That's why I wanted a no-doc loan.
Well, making money on a rental is not, I don't make money on rental. Well, I shouldn't say that. Brooke would know this better, but I'm going to make an assumption. We don't make a lot of money on our rentals because if you look at the paperwork, we have depreciation, right?
Mhm.
So the first few years, especially if you have cost segregation, the property's not making money, but that's not what the bank is looking at if it's an income producing property. They're looking at what is the rent coming in and what's your total cost of payment going out. And is it going to cover it and leave you more left over? Or are you going to be left holding a bag at the end of the month? That's what they look at. So
that's a non-traditional bank, because a traditional
no,
bank
that's
is
a
gonna be,
traditional bank. If you're going
because
as a rental.
yeah, no, but here's the thing. If I never mind the fact that I'm not making money on the property, it then goes to my income. And when I did cost segregation, it from LLC, it went through to my income, and so it took away a lot of taxes that I would have otherwise had to pay, and so I wound up paying zero taxes. So it was like losses. I showed losses, and so I had no,
You had no income because of all of your depreciation.
Yeah, but I'm saying other income from other sources. My husband is working. I have another company. So altogether, the LLC is a pass-through entity. So the losses, once.
I understand what you're saying. At the
Yeah.
end of finishing your tax year, you had 0 tax liability because your
Mhm.
depreciation expenses exceeded all the income you had from all your other sources.
Yes.
Did I
Yeah,
say
so-
that right? Okay.
Yes.
So if you go to a bank with a rental property that is cash flowing, where the new mortgage, whatever that's going to be, and your interest and your insurance, and all those numbers added together, you're still cash flowing every month. And you talk to a bank that actually works with investors, they're going to look at that and they're going to say that the building is cash flowing. Your income was impacted by depreciation, not by your lack of income.
Well, maybe that's the bank that works with investors. So I can't just go into Chase Bank.
No,
Obviously.
actually, it's not even a
don't
bank
ever
you're
go to
gonna deal
Chase
with.
Bank.
You're most likely, first of all, it has to be a local small bank or a credit union. Credit unions will lend to LLCs. Okay. They'll do a full doc loan, but they'll lend to an LLC and give you the bank style rates versus what hard money will charge for a no doc.
Okay, well, that sounds good, and I'm definitely going to try that with my next rental property, but I'm trying to finish this cash out refinance ASAP so that I can use that money to buy another property before the year end. And I just wanted to, it took me a very long time with one broker who basically ghosted me, and I was trying to go after him, and he would give me like a little bit, yeah, I'm busy today, I'll talk to you tomorrow, and then never coming back to me.
Yeah.
So I wasted a lot of time. So now I'm trying to get this done because it's the end of October. And so I'm just wondering, am I being charged too high of an interest and too high of a closing cost? And should I be negotiating or just looking at a different lender?
May I? Can I step in? So we look at that stuff a little bit different than that. The only questions I have to ask are the closing costs under 5%. If they are, then I don't actually what they are. And then the interest rate is irrelevant to me. I just want to know what the cash on cash return is when I'm done. And if that is an acceptable number in a middle class property, I'm going to, well, that's market variance, but in our market, we'll want 10 to 12% cash on cash. And I couldn't care less if that's a 12% loan. If that still cash flows, great, I'll take it. If you're concerned about the time and you've already gone through underwriting and those numbers work, take it. You can always refi it again.
Gone through underwriting. He just gave me all the numbers, and now I just have to say okay, and then we're gonna do appraisal and whatever. I'm just concerned that maybe because it's my first rental property, like I said, if my rent is $1,550 and from that you got to take out management fee, and then
we can't talk numbers like this. So how about this? If you're interested, visit my website. There's a deal form for a buy and hold. Fill it out, and we'll respond with what we can do for a 30-year mortgage for a cash out refi on your property. And you can compare quotes, and it either works for you or it doesn't work for you. And like Brian said, the time you've already invested into this person is worth something as well. So, just basically, or turn around to them and ask them what exactly the breakdown of the fees is. What are they charging you for? Because if you find out that, they're charging you 2 points and they're charging you for an appraisal and a legal fee, but in addition to that, there's $3,000 of broker fees, that's something you can negotiate and go at it that way.
Yeah,
But
I didn't invest too much time into him. I'm sorry to interrupt you again. I didn't invest too much time into him. I just was trying to chase him. That's the second guy I was trying to chase, and I basically wrote him an email saying if I don't hear by the end of the week, I'm done with you. And then I heard from him today. So
let's talk about actually, let's look at that. If you have to chase your lender, that's a red flag. And a big point I want to make to you guys is trust your intuition. Okay. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And if you dig in enough with enough questions and don't feel shy about asking questions. Okay, especially if you're on the lending side, but even if you're on the borrowing side, you're talking about a significant amount of money. Ask your questions. Ask them what the fees are. What are the total fees, right? What are the total fees? Because what you don't want to find out is that when you get to the closing table, oh, by the way, there's another couple of thousand here for something. You want to know this. So ask your questions. And if something feels wrong, you know, walk away, because trust me, an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of regret. So just go at it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Good.
Who else?
Any more questions? I don't.
I'm either that good or that bad.
I think you covered it all.